I'm still on my quest to find the best of the Ryzen 7000 series mini PCs, and this is definitely another one of those ones. It is very good. It's from Beelink. It's called the SER7. Now it's powered by the Ryzen 7, the 7840HS. So not the 7940HS that I reviewed previously with the GTR 7. Now if you've seen my video on that Beelink mini PC, I ran into some issues where it would randomly reboot or power off. Well, I can thankfully say right now here at the start that this is not the case with the new SER7. So the SER7 does have two USB 4 ports on it. It's got two PCIe 4.0 ports. My configuration has 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD, and it is running Windows 11 Pro. Here's what's included. So we have a VESA mounting bracket, user manual, short HDMI cable, long HDMI cable, screws for that VESA mounting bracket, and then finally our power supply, which is 120 watts. So it has a great compact size to it, considering the kind of power that's within this. We've got our Ryzen 9, the 7840HS, and that has 8 cores, 16 threads, and of course the Radeon 780M graphics. Now the maximum turbo is up to 5.1 gigahertz, and this has a little mesh on the top here with the new cooler inside. So they've done some little tweaks and changes, and that's going to be blowing the hot air out of the back here. Now there are plenty of ports up the front here. We've got a 3.5 millimeter with microphone support here, clear CMOS. Those two are just USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, power button with status LED, and then the back we have some faster ports. So both of those are USB 4 ports. So that's the 40 gigabits per second power delivery, video out 4K 60, and up to 144 hertz, and even 8K they can output. We've got HDMI 2.1. So that's 4K 120 hertz, and then a display port 1.4, two USB 2 ports, and a 2.5 gigabit LAN port. Now they're still using this. Now apparently why they went instead of the typical barrel connector and then their own style plug here is so they could fit more ports on the back of it. And you see how it connects up. It's just like that with a magnet clips on the back. I really do wish they'd still gone with, however, the standard style barrel plug, because it's very easy then to source a replacement if this happens to fail the power supply. Now gaining access to the internals is not difficult. There are these 4 screws that I already have removed and a little tab here, so you pull up on that and then that pops off. So you can install another SSD here. This is a 2280 millimeter PCIe 4.0. So you slot that in here, that's where you're going to screw it in. And the back of it, the bottom here does have a thermal pad. So it's going to act as a big, nice, huge heatsink. And there is this little fan here too. So that's going to be keeping the RAM cool and cooling down your SSD that's here too as well. And you can see there's actually a little bit of metal right here. So that's another heatsink. So that fan's going to be moving air around just to keep things cool. So that's as far as it goes with the upgrades, just easy access, but it's not that difficult. I will show you now how we can access the RAM and our boot SSD. So there are some screws to remove around the sides here. There's 2 on top of where the SSD, little tiny little PCB that's here, and there's 1 screw there. So there's actually 3 for that part. Now you don't need to completely remove this. There's a ribbon cable connecting that to the motherboard. So we've got our heatsink here, that little fan. This then lifts up, and you'll see that it can only go so far. That's because we've got our power cable there connected, but you can kind of lift it up like that, gain access to things, and you can unplug that little cooler fan that's on the bottom here. So note there's another thermal pad, so that's great. They do have this being applied to the boot SSD. So that's where our main drive is. You can replace this, upgrade that if you wanted to do so. The RAM is from Crucial, so this is DDR5, 5600 megahertz, and I've got 2 sticks of 16 gigabytes, giving us that 32 in total, which is a nice amount to have, the amount that I would go, and in fact the amount I have in my main PC, and I think most people will be pretty happy with that, but you can upgrade to 64 gigabytes. So that's as far as I will go with the teardown. You could go a little bit further, but I want to keep that factory paste job intact, so my thermals will be exactly how it is out of the factory. Alright, so we are in the BIOS first, and I wanted to go over a couple of things. So chipset, there's nothing useful there. Advanced settings, there is. So CPU configuration, nothing we can really mess with, but it's AMD CBS. You want to go into then the MBIO comment option, select this, Go to graphics configuration. If you want to change this, you don't have to do this, of course. Now, it is UMA specified, and that's going to give us 2 gigabytes of dedicated RAM. But if you want 4 gigabytes, this is if you have 32 gigabytes installed, select game optimized. And I believe if you've got 64 gigabytes of RAM installed, this will then give you 8 gigabytes of RAM dedicated to the 780M. So I'm going to leave that as stock, and that's it is as standard. And you've got your AC Powerless options. So if you want to run this as a server, you want to turn that to always on, or previous state maybe, but it would be always on for a server. SMU comment options, nothing really you want to change unless you want to have go at tweaking that fan yourself. You can go into manual controls, but it's just all default here as I'm reviewing it. You can go also into the setting, which is the OEM features management. And this is the power limit setting. Now you have either balance mode or performance mode, and they are both, I believe, as far as I've seen with my testing, 54 watts is the power limit. So it's in performance mode here that I've set. By default, it is balance, but I'm going to put it into performance. It may increase the fan noise too as well, but it should boost the performance. So let's go over now into Windows. For Windows, we are running Windows 11 Pro. I've updated everything. I have updated also the Radeon drivers. This is the latest from AMD, which is supposed to help with the performance. We'll see. But so far, it looks to be good. Now, I wanted to comment on the stability of this mini PC too, right here at the start, because I had issues with the GTR 7, which had the Ryzen 9 7940HS. It would randomly reboot on me, and even after several BIOS updates, it didn't fix it. This model, stable. Absolutely. I've been stress testing it, pushing it hard. No problems whatsoever with it. And that's good to see. So with the Ryzen 7 model here, it does have the 16 threads, the 8 cores, and it's 5.1 gigahertz, the max turbo. The key thing with it is, of course, the Radeon 780M graphics, which I'll get onto the performance of that soon. So we only have Wi-Fi 6 in this, and it's the AX200 from Intel, which is fine, but it really should have the Wi-Fi 6E. Now, you can fix this problem because the Wi-Fi card is upgradable. So you remove the boot drive SSD underneath it, you'll find that small little Wi-Fi card, swap it out for an AX211, problem solved. You've then got the fastest Wi-Fi 6E. So the SSD, it's a CT1000P3 PSSD8, and this is the speed of it that I've had up here. It's not bad, not the fastest. You want better than that, then go and buy yourself something like a 990 Pro or the 980 Pro from Samsung, and you can get those full PCIe 4.0 speeds. So with benchmarks, Cinebench R23, very good score, especially the multi-core score. I mean, look, this has Threadripper performance, the 1950X, yet it's such a tiny little mini PC here. And that's got 16 cores and 32 threads. This is 8 and 16, so it's doing very, very well because, well, that is an older chip now too as well, but that's how things have progressed here. Great leaps and bounds in performance here. So Geekbench 6, great score here, very good. Now it's just marginally behind the Ryzen 9 version of this chipset. The Ryzen 9 version can get about just over 110 points here or so with the single core score and a little more when it comes to multi-score performance. But really, real world performance, you don't notice this difference at all. That is basically nothing. You can only see this in synthetic benchmarks. So Time Spy, I'm getting over 3,000 points there. The graphics score is okay. I have seen faster from the 780M. It's certainly not the fastest. If you did again have the Ryzen 9 version of this particular chipset, a little bit quicker there. And you can see a little bit more information about that chipset. Hit pause here. But the reason I've got this screenshot is I wanted to show you that the default power limit is 54, which it is on the balanced mode. But in the BIOS, I changed it, and it is in fact now 65. So if I go here to my thermals, I wanted to talk a little bit about those. You can see here it's pulling up to 65 watts, no thermal throttling, no problems with the thermal. So it's getting up to almost 86 degrees Celsius. This is fantastic. Very good thermals. Fan noise is excellent. So right now I can't hear it at all. It's just very, very low RPM at the moment. And I'll stress it out now, and I'll give you a fan sample under full load, just to give you an idea what to expect. And our night raid benchmark, it got almost 29,000 points. Again, putting it a little bit behind the Ryzen 9 7940HS, but still good performance considering this is integrated graphics and it is a tiny little mini PC. So video playback, we've got native VP9 HEVC decoding, of course, and I'm going to run a couple of files here. So first up is 140 megabits per second, my test clip, and you'll see that that loads in no drop frames. It is running fine, really good for video playback performance. The next one, this here is a clip that is 4K 60, still very demanding, HDR, and it's running just fine again. This is 60 frames per second, so a little bit smoother too. Skipping ahead, there's no delay. This chipset and mostly that Radeon integrated graphics handles video files just fine, perfect, very smooth playback with no dropped frames. Demanding work, something like a 4K video edit, could it handle it? Well, it can, and it does reasonably well. So this is one of my own videos, one of my reviews here of some Soundcore in-ears that have noise cancellation. You can see the timeline here is very quick. Now I've got it set to quarter playback only, which is what I recommend for just integrated graphics. And scrubbing ahead here, very good, this performance. Now, admittedly, yes, my videos are very basic. There's no fancy transitions, no silly sound effects, none of that kind of stuff. But it does make it a lot easier too on editing. And I could, yes, edit and export and do it all from this mini PC if it's short, if it doesn't have a lot of grading, transitions and all that sort of stuff. I've got some basic white balance grading here or something that I was doing. Yes, colors, slight little tweak, and a few other bits and pieces, but nothing that is really demanding. So export time, this is going to be different. I want to see now, because it's almost 13 minutes, how long will it take at the YouTube preset to export a 13-minute, almost 12 minutes and 42 seconds file at that preset. So let's find out here. All right, there we go. So with my little delay there, about 10 minutes, 37 seconds, to fully encode one of my own reviews here, one of my own videos, that is 12 minutes and 42 seconds long. That's not bad, but it could be better. It could definitely be better. Gaming performance now. So I have it on the low settings, Starfield. This is a new title that I will be testing out because it's going to be a popular game. It already is. And it's quite a demanding game at that. So I set the desktop to 720p. And I'll just quickly show you my settings because, well, they're all pretty much their default low setting you'll find here under display. So you can see the only thing I've changed is resolution scale. That was on 50%, but it just looks like garbage. It looks really bad, really washed out. So I put it to 80%, so it's a bit of a trade-off there. Otherwise, it's all on the low setting for graphics preset. Why it says custom is because of that 80%. That's the only thing. So outside here, you're looking about 35 to 40 frames per second when there's a little bit going on. There's a lot to render here in New Atlantis. And I'll go indoors because this is where the frame rate does improve. So when you're inside, space stations, wherever, buildings, I'll just show you right here that it should be about 80 frames per second. And this is where you may be having some firefights and whatnot. So that's about 60 frames per second here. Isn't ideal, but yeah, hey, this is integrated graphics here in the 780M, handling it, pulling about 63 watts here. There's a little bit of throttling taking place. Just go back outside again. I'll see if there's any security guards around that I can shoot at. Don't think there's going to be any about. Okay, so if I'm not rendering my self here too as well, that can help the frame rate. So if I just go into the first person perspective instead of third, you get an extra, what, 3 frames per second. That's not really a lot. So just bring out, oh, I want a gun here, not an axe. And you can see the frame rate will dip down a little bit when I'm having a fight here with the security. Okay, doesn't seem to affect it too bad. So you will be able to play this game in firefights, things going on, but I can't promise it's going to be amazing performance. You may want to lower the settings down a little bit more, that resolution scale, but there isn't too much you can really do. The Witcher 3 now, and this is set to the lowest preset, 1080p, and it's playable around about 40 frames per second. There's a lot to render here, and I am in a busy town, so there's NPCs about and whatnot, so it's kind of like a worst case scenario. Out in the countryside, the frame rate does pick up. And if you're not happy with this frame rate, lower it down to 720p, and that will definitely give a boost to what you can expect out of your FPS. It's going to be a little bit smoother there. If you don't like gaming at only, say, 37 frames per second, which it currently is here with The Witcher. Now, this is the big patch 4.0 that I'm testing out. And finally, for our gaming test, this is GTA 5, and I've got it set at 1080p, medium settings, and it's around 70 frames per second, so it is like the other mini PCs with the Ryzen 7000 series, really about the same. There's maybe a few more frames per second you get out of running the Ryzen 9, but you really don't get that much more of an advantage out of it, and it's still very playable. And yes, of course, it is an older title, so it's quite lightweight nowadays, very easy to run, even on integrated graphics, with a really good playable frame rate. And for Linux, yes, it is working now. This is Manjaro that I tested out with open source drivers, the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, the Type-C ports, video out. It is all working, no problems, including the audio. So that is great to see. So it is for me ticking all of the boxes, this mini PC. It doesn't thermal throttle, it does not randomly reboot or power off. I've not had any problems like I have with some of the previous mini PCs that are running the 7000 series, like the 7840HS or the 7940HS with the GTR7 from Minis Forum or from Beelink. Both of them have been kind of problematic, and I don't know whether the fault lies with the manufacturers or with AMD. But I am on the latest drivers here, and this version with the BIOS that it came with, absolutely no problem. So I can say that it's very good mini PC. This is definitely one of the best if you're after the latest and greatest, and you want that Radeon 780M for its best integrated performance that there really is that you can get now until Intel's latest comes out, which will be sometime end of this year maybe, but probably be Q1 next year. So it's all good, apart from there's just two things I don't like. Now, they're pretty much minor things, just me nitpicking really, is the Wi-Fi 6 instead of Wi-Fi 6E. The other is this magnetic connector. Now, I know the reasoning behind it was and is because they just needed a bit more room for the ports on the back, which is great. We do have the 2.5 gigabit LAN on there. We've got the two USB Type-C, USB 4.0s, which is great, but a standard barrel connector would have been a little bit better. Now, Linux runs just fine. The gaming performance, as you have seen in this video, is very good for integrated graphics. You have to keep reminding yourself that. And then you can edit 4K videos with high bit rates, and the export times aren't amazing, but they're still decent, and the fact that you can do it on such a small mini PC is great. Now, I know this question is going to pop up. Is it better than what I said is one of the best, or the best, which is the UM790 from Minis Forum? Well, this thing is, as you can see here, just a tiny bit smaller, and I've had no random reboots or pairing off with my UM790, but the comments on my video have said that a lot of people are having issues with this model too as well. And so far, I've not experienced any problems with this unit, but that's how I got it out of the box, and the same goes for this one. I'm not experiencing any problems at all, and no, this video is not paid. If I did have any issues, I would certainly state them, like I did have issues with the GTR7 from Beelink, and that one randomly rebooted on me, powered off. Even after the BIOS updates, I was still having issues, and they did issue a bottom plate with some more vents on it and a fan, which this already has built into it, so that's why it doesn't run into any thermal problems, no random reboots. Very, very good mini PC here from Beelink. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the SER7 from Beelink.